There's a couple of questions from each one of the sessions that we're going to save till the end when we invite all of our CEOs to join us. So please hold thoughts in terms of some interactive questions. I'd now like to invite Nick Brien, the CEO of Universal McCann, and Mainardo de Nardis, the CEO of Aegis Media Worldwide. This session is going to focus on competition and consolidation in the industry. Mainardo, you've played both sides of this discussion, having been a longtime member of a media agency within a holding company that had other partners and other siblings, and now your focus is again back to your original time in the industry where you're in something that would be qualified as a media-focused agency holding company in and of itself, so to speak. When you're faced with having to cooperate with a competitive agency on a piece of business, and again, we talked earlier about integration, how do you protect the confidential elements of your work? It's a question I think that's on everybody's mind.
Let me give you two answers. First of all, I think it's much harder to cooperate when all the agencies are part of the same group. I know it's a paradox, but cooperation and collaboration is much easier with agencies which are competitors sometimes than within the same group. But anyway, in a world which is becoming 2.0 every day, where everything is about collaboration, where collaboration is based on trust, it's taken for granted that you're working for a client together with other agencies. It doesn't matter if they're specialists in the same sector or in different complementary sectors. It must be based on trust. If that trust is breached, I think you start having problems. But the first person who understands that there is a problem is a client, and at the end, that agency probably doesn't have many chances to continue to work in the same way. I think we've got to understand that we've got to collaborate, we've got to partner with other agencies. Nobody has all the solutions. It's always a round table, and the different people with different skills have to cooperate together.
I think I just want to, before I answer that question, just address, I think, the previous panel we were talking about content. One of the things that came out yesterday, so much was about the importance of great content. But I think that the biggest opportunity we have as media agencies working with clients is to shape content strategy for brands that really does embrace not just the branded content and what we're pushing out, but we're thinking as much about what consumers are pulling down. And I think about the huge amount of money clients having to spend on their web activities, on their direct content activities, and they really need to be developed in very close collaboration, the same way a DJ really does focus on making sure there's continuous engagement with their audiences. We've got to be the CJs, we've got to be the content jockeys and really pull that together. I think the content space is very exciting. But coming to this question, the competition internally and the way we work together, I don't think is an issue at all if the rules of engagement are established. I think it can be very destructive if there's brands and businesses within the same holding company who really are essentially not looking to do work on the client's behalf, and they're not going to collaborate together, and they're not going to be focused together. I think it's, without doubt, a big problem.
It was actually a year ago this week, just when leaving Venice, that there was a startling announcement in the business, in the industry. It was the acquisition, or the proposed acquisition at the time, of DoubleClick by Google. And certainly was an interesting dialogue in the industry globally this past year from a regulatory standpoint and from a competitive standpoint. And close to a year later, that deal was finally approved. And now on the back of that, we've experienced over the last 2 months, particularly even last week, one of the most startling times in the industry from a consolidation standpoint with the proposed Microsoft Yahoo acquisition. And then last week alone, I don't think I've ever seen a time where so many strange bedfellows were arriving on the scene between AOL and News Corp and on and on and on. The elephant in the middle of the room here is, from a competition standpoint and from a consolidation standpoint, I pose a question. I'll ask Nick the question first. Is this a time when potential consolidation in the industry is actually something that could enhance competition as opposed to inhibit it?
We work with Microsoft globally, and I have to say, I think it's the whole issue of anti-competition raises its head all the time. But I think the market has a natural way of being able to deal with that. I think the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. I think the consolidation and those opportunities for agencies on behalf of clients looking to get richer, more meaningful, and more effective solutions, it grows exponentially. I think it's actually a fantastic thing. I think if the downside is potentially that we're going to be in a situation as agencies and holding companies where the pricing starts to become an issue, we'll deal with that. But I think their ability to manage data, their ability to develop tools and technologies and allow us to really think about smarter, more integrated marketing solutions that drive consumer engagement, we're going to get to a whole different space. So I think it's a very exciting time in our industry. And consolidation happens. I mean, think about it on the client side. J&J and Consumer and Pfizer, you think about P&G and Gillette. There's a natural trend towards consolidation, I think, in all aspects of industry. And the fact that it's happening in the media and the communication side is a positive thing.
I totally agree with Nick. And we don't work for Microsoft, so we're more credible in our answer. But I totally agree with him. I think that the consumer will eventually decide, yes, there is consolidation. There is consolidation in every industry in the world because it creates efficiency. And what's wrong with efficiency? If something is easier and more effective to be bought by bundling and putting things together, of course that is going to happen. At the same time, I think it's very wrong to think that consolidation creates less competition. It's a big market in which we operate. Our consumers have millions of opportunities to play, live, act with brands throughout the whole day. They will find the right opportunities. They will follow them. If you put the consumer at the center, competition will always be enhanced by new opportunities which come to the market.
Let's just turn the spotlight inside or unstructured for a second. We're talking about consolidation. You're both part of large international holding companies, global networks. You're both finding ways to win. Nick, you in particular, but we want to hear from you as well, Mainardo. You're finding ways to win inside these conglomerates. Nick, particularly the success that IPG has had in the media landscape. I know you're modest, but it's worth talking about. I think you found ways to partner, collaborate, and draw the best of the resources. Mainardo, you as well. Let's just for a moment talk about, we can all talk over drinks about the frustrations of holding companies, and they're numerous, but let's for a moment talk about where it's helping you and where you're finding opportunities to really win by playing together.
I think we've talked about, the other panels were talking about this as well. I mean, Jack said it very well, and Steve. I mean, we are having, although the media agencies are stretching the definition of media in a very exciting way. I don't think there's ever been a more challenging and also stimulating time to be in our industry, strategically and creatively. But we can't do it all. I think, as Jack said, if we've moved from being the specialist to the generalist, and that's an exciting space to be. But with all the challenges and the way consumers using technology and to develop brand relationships, I mean, just whether it's conversational marketing, there was a panel on that yesterday, mobility, all those different aspects, there is a huge need for specialists. So within IPG, we've been very open-minded to say we can't do it on our own. I mean, the J&J pitch last year in the US, I mean, we partnered extensively with RGA. They provide a level of technology and digital application that we just don't have those skills. And a lot of those skills and sensibilities wouldn't join a media agency, but they're very happy to work in consort. So I think the notion of an open architecture culture, we've got to take the lead on that. And I think if a sensibility is to partnership, we're going to attract in those players, and we're going to say, but it is without doubt, it's becoming such a complex, fragmented environment that we've got to learn and we've got to experiment. It's another reason why we actually created the Emerging Media Lab in LA, which was a joint venture between Sony, Microsoft, and Intel. We all funded it together. We're now opening one in Berlin and one in Beijing, and that's about R&D and experimentation, because everyone, I mean, whether it's the clients in the audience, the media owners, or the agencies, we all have many, many more questions than we have answers for. And I think if we have an open mindset and a very curious, intellectual curiosity, then it's going to be very attractive for partners to want to work with us.
I think we're very lucky to live every day, all of us, in an incredibly innovative industry. At the same time, I think that we're incredibly conservative in the way that we approach it. P&Ls, brands, silos, different disciplines. We try to separate everything we do as an industry. I think that everything that came up this morning about open relationships, variable communities, how to allow specialists to work with integrators for the benefit of the client and always having the consumer in mind is the formula for the new agency of the future. I don't think anybody has got it right yet. I think we're all moving in that direction, but I don't think that we've identified the right way, and perhaps there isn't the right way. Perhaps there are many different ways to do it, because different clients have different needs. I think if I look at our agency, at our group of agencies, that it's all about culture, it's all in the DNA, it's all about in the spirit of trying to go the extra mile, the next step, to innovate, to experiment, to take risks sometimes. Because we always ask our clients to take risks, but we're not very good at taking risks ourselves in our industry. So I think we should keep on experimenting. We're going the right way. Let's just do it a bit quicker, because otherwise we'll be still talking about it in the next 10 years.
We talked in the content session about skin in the game. A couple of weeks ago, Jonah Bloom wrote a very interesting piece in Ad Age around that concept of skin in the game, and I think he focused particularly on Groupe M taking an investment position in technology with the investment they made in NVIDIA. And I'm curious, because we're in that section here on consolidation and competition. Your views, Nick first, the views on the ability or, the appropriate nature of a media agency making an investment in a technology and then finding a way to have that be, and I'll use an inartful word, but marked up in the process of working with a client and making a profit on that, as opposed to just adding it into the services that they're already providing.
I think there's two different issues. I mean, I also commented, I thought Jonah's article was great. He was really on the money. But I think there's two aspects. One is what we need to do to reinvent our legacy business model and how we're using technology enablement to automate and systematize redundant business process. I mean, that's just us having to find a way to ensure that we get more headcount into the more strategic and creative domains of our business. But then there's the other side of it, which is to what end does technology give us a competitive advantage that can change the dynamics of the business model? Because we're all struggling, and even we heard yesterday we were lambasted for not spending enough money on our training and even on the basics. Well, I have to say, we've got the traditional model, we've got all the different aspects of it, and I think that we need to make big investments. It's one of the big conversations I'm having with IPG about the continual investment. And of course, the question is, what's the return on that investment? And that's not going to stop. I think technology is a huge enabler. But to a certain extent, the pressure is also on the media owners and a lot of the new digital agencies as well, and the digital companies that we're dealing with, to think much more seriously about how our business needs to gain greater financial efficiency. So I think there's an efficiency side and there's an entrepreneurial business model side that demands that we are spending a lot more money on technology. But at the same time, it can't just add on. It's got to be used to really reinvent the business model, because none of us, I mean, we're all dealing with the same challenge. And I think none of us want to run a better railroad if we believe the future is aviation.